Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Dennis Stockman, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Warrant Officer Jeff Banning. We warmly welcome the family of Private Harold Baxter, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During this ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Harold Baxter. Born in Essex in England, Harold Baxter moved to Australia when he was 16 years old. He was living and working as a farm labourer at Gilgandra in Western New South Wales when he enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in October 1915. Known to his friends as Bob, Baxter enlisted as part of the first snowball march, known as the Cooee March, a recruitment drive that aimed to gather marchers like a snowball rolling down a hill as it progressed from Gilgandra to the recruiting depot at Sydney, welcomed by large crowds along the way. 26 men left Gilgandra on the 10th of October 1915, and by the time they reached Sydney just over a month later, the numbers had swelled to over 260 recruits. According to his father, Harold was one of a half-dozen recruits who managed to walk the entire distance from Gilgandra to Sydney without assistance, a distance of over 500 kilometres. The 22-year-old Baxter was assigned to the 13th Battalion and embarked for Egypt on the troop ship Star of England in early March 1916. Upon arrival in Egypt, he was transferred to the 45th Battalion, which had been raised as part of the expansion and reorganisation of the AIF that took place after the evacuation from Gallipoli. About half of the new recruits were Gallipoli veterans from the 13th Battalion. Baxter was among the other half, consisting of fresh reinforcements from Australia. As part of the 12th Brigade of the 4th Australian Division, the 45th Battalion arrived in France in early June 1916, destined for the Western Front. It fought in its first major battle at Pozieres in August, defending ground previously captured by the 2nd Australian Division. After Pozieres, the battalion alternated between duty in the trenches and training and rest behind the lines, first around Ypres in Belgium and then in the Somme Valley in France. On the 22nd of November, Baxter was among 2 support companies sent up to relieve those in the line near Gerdecourt. After relief was complete, the enemy opened up an intense bombardment. A large shell exploded in the trench where Baxter was positioned, and he and 2 others were killed instantly. He was buried nearby the following day, and a cross was placed on his grave. His body was later reinterred at Bancourt British Cemetery at Picardy in France. Private Harold Baxter's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Harold Baxter, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and for the playing of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last pose ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.